Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to IBTM Connect. My name's Alistair Turner. I'm the Managing Director of 8PR and Marketing. It's my absolute pleasure and privilege to be moderating this session. For those of you who don't know IBTM Connect, it's a content stream from IBTM that's all about keeping us together as an industry and to bring you kind of the best content possible. It's really gathering momentum. I understand there's a huge amount of people watching this feed, so welcome to everyone for coming joining us. And I'm delighted to say we've got a really great panel to talk about the initiatives and protocols that are being put in place around safety around this post-COVID-19 world, and we're going to look to delve into that over the next hour or so. So before I do anything, I do want to introduce our panelists. So first of all, we've got Ian Leat, Regional Director, Western Europe, Global Sales for Marriott Hotels International. We've got Carey Duckworth, Group Director of Sales, Corinthia Hotels. And we've got Hilary Patterson, Director of Global Sales, MICE Europe, Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. Guys, thanks so much for joining us and giving us your time. It really means a lot to us, so thank you. The first thing I'm going to do is kind of take us all back around 12 weeks ago when this all kicked off. And I just want to get an idea of kind of where you were when it all happened and your thinking as it evolved. So, Carey, I understand you got quite an interesting story around this. So why don't you kick us off about where you were?
Well, we haven't got any hotels in Asia, but we've got a team based there, and there was certain concerns in the early part of 2020 that there was this challenge happening in and around Asia that could be coming over towards Europe, towards the Middle East and Africa, and we quickly started to look at where our risk was and what that would look like in the short, medium and long term for us as a brand. Obviously, we were following guidelines from various countries in and around on what was happening. And we got to a point where we were starting to become concerned around that. We had some events that we were due to attend that hotels were telling us that, we're slightly concerned about this. But we conduct an annual roadshow in North America that we'd committed to doing, and we'd committed to venues, to buyers, to clients. We decided that at the time it was probably the right thing to do that, but scale the event back and not do it usually as big as we did. So we headed off to one of our key markets in New York, and this was then starting to pick up real pace that we think this could be a real challenge. So whilst we were there, we were hosting our annual client cocktail event, and we had one of our best turnouts ever. We were in the North American market, was just behind us. The event was our most successful turnout in terms of the luxury travel market. We finished, we were delighted in terms of the turnout, but we were obviously cautious of what was going on. And we really had decided that trip wasn't about selling the brand. It was about supporting the travel community and supporting our partners to let them know that we have no idea how long this is going to take, what the roadmap of this is going to look like, but we will be there to support them through it and after that. That night, which we finished, we gave ourselves a little pat on the back, and then there was a US news broadcast from Donald Trump saying that the borders would be closing. So that point was time to get back to London and really put our plan into place. And that seems about 3 years ago now, but it's only in the early part of 2020. So that was when we really knew that we had some real challenges coming down the line.
And just how quickly, just bring us back, because it feels like a blur to me, certainly, but how quickly were you guys sitting there going, actually, we're now looking at closures? How quickly did that spread across your territory?
Fairly quickly. We'd made decisions, and at the time we were thinking it's always difficult when you close an operation, whether that's for refurbishment or you've moved a location or destination. but we pretty much knew pretty quickly that there was going to be government restrictions that were going to either enforce us to fully close or to partially close or to change the way we operate in the short term. So it was a fairly swift decision from our senior team that was going to happen.
Cool. How about you, Hilary? I'm interested, again, same sort of question. Just take us back to how it kind of unfolded in your world.
So similar to Carey, we had wind from Asia and from China. We've got over Wyndham Hotels and Resorts have over 1,000 hotels in China, including Wuhan. So we had wind of everything, but closer to home. The last week in February, we had a GSO MICE roadshow around London and the surrounds. And we had colleagues from one of our properties in Milan. And she was very reticent, should she come? How would she be received? Because Northern Italy was in lockdown at that stage. And we said, go with your gut and come and see how it goes. And she took the light-hearted approach, saying, I've got loads of availability. We're offering great rates because their property had fallen from 100% occupancy right down to less than 10% at the time. And then that week, everything started gathering pace. One of our colleagues from our German properties was told to fly home. And then on the Friday, one of our colleagues from one of our properties in Lisbon, his phone kept going. Car launch was cancelled and there was postponement after postponement.
Right.
And then that evening, there was a large industry awards dinner and there was a lot of word, is it going to happen here? Is it going to come to the UK? How is it going to be received? But I think we were again quite stoic and saying, it can't happen to us. It won't happen to us. And maybe having our eyes closed a little bit as an industry as to what was going to happen in the next 14 days. Brilliant.
And then Ian, again, I guess it's the same question to you, but I guess when did you start making the switch? Actually, not just is this happening, it's this has happened, and I need to start looking at some recovery strategies.
No, exactly, and similar story to my colleagues on the panel. I think in answer to how quickly could we react, I think the short answer was very quickly. Similarly, Marriott's got a significant hotel footprint within China and Asia, so the company was touched directly and impacted very early on. So the reaction was very quick. And I think what this also enabled us to do was that it enabled us, as this sort of epicenter moved from Asia into Europe, into Italy and Spain, it allowed us to sort of, amend our planning going forward, and our recovery plans going forward for different regions of the world, because we're able to use the knowledge we gained from China, as in timelines of when hotels had closed and potentially when they were going to open, to then start to use that in the planning for further regions for Europe. And similarly, as we started to, we developed recovery plans within China, within Asia, we could then take what the best practice, what had really worked, and then anticipate using those recovery plans in Europe and those other regions as they started to get affected by the pandemic.
That's great. Appreciate that. I want to sort of move on to the main piece of what this is about, which is about recovery strategies and injecting confidence into the industry. What I'd say to anyone sort of watching out there as well is, as with all IBTM Connect events, this is much about your questions is about my own. So if you have a question, do use the system functionality, get that on there, and we'll make sure we get to them. In the meantime, I'll carry on, but we want you to get what you want out of it. So, Carey, can you just talk about, I guess, at first, the strategy back from recovery? How does one address this during a shutdown with no imminent reopening date? How do you start looking at how you as a brand, as a business, is going to recover?
Well, I think after you have the initial breath of, as I say, closing the hotels or restricting the way that you're used to operating, you have a chance then to go through and look at what will it look like when we come back? What does it look like, and how long is that going to look like? And that operates in a number of different ways. We looked at the recovery in terms of, from an event side, of what events we had booked. So we had to obviously engage in different countries, in different markets with clients in terms of what their thoughts were, what information they were looking for from us, and also some ideas of what was coming from the market. Unfortunately for us, unlike Ian and Hilary, our hotels, we didn't have any hotels in Asia, so our practice was set out by what we felt would be a suitable recovery time, and then work it in smaller areas. So it was the commercial side of it, the side of the operational side of how we would start to work with new events, with how guests would come in, whilst maintaining our standards that are set within the luxury segment and the luxury market. So the recovery rebuild was fairly quick into the process after the initial bit of trying to navigate around what business we had on the books, what future business we had. Was that business going to be replaced? Was it going to be cancelled, postponed? How would we be able to do that? Would we be able, some of our hotels cater for larger events, how would we be able to conduct those events in the future with the buzzword of the time, or what is going to be the buzzword of 2020, which I think is going to be social distancing? What does that look like? So our recovery has been a plan that has obviously been set out by our senior management and has been very clearly led and demonstrated to the team. But it also has been a number of difficult and challenging conversations with clients around what does the future look like for you, and how can we be as flexible while supporting and trying to deliver on what they wanted. And is that what they want in the future? An annual conference or an incentive program that was scheduled for Q2 of 2020. What does that look like? Does it take place in the back end of 2020? Does it happen again in Q1 of next year? So all of that, and obviously there's a major responsibility in terms of the commercial position of the brand and the individual hotel. So we've taken stock in terms of from each of our managing directors, each of our general managers, about how they're operating, and we started that way as soon as the process, as soon as the hotels were pretty much closed, and we'd never.
Real. Thanks, Carey. So I think we just lost the last end of your message there, but I want to go. I guess one of the big things about recovery strategies is injecting some confidence in the buyer, and also I guess the end user as well. So Ian, just been really interested in on a side note, sort of quite impressed with how quickly Marriott were on that in terms of reassuring the customer around cleanliness, hygiene, discipline around social distancing, and actually getting a really concerted strategy out there to the industry. I wondered if you could give us a bit of an inside track of that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've always had we've placed an emphasis on health and safety of our guests and employees alike. But I think that the whole pandemic has meant we've had to raise those demanding standards to an even higher level. But very early on, we came out with our commitment to cleanliness, and it's basically a commitment to give a safe environment, aligning with expert protocols via our Cleanliness Council, and that basically consists of in-house and outside experts in food and water safety, hygiene, and infection prevention. And basically, this council is continually looking at and monitoring the pandemic and adapting our protocols to ensure the safe environment for our guests and customers alike. And really, I guess the salient points is a multi-pronged approach, but the key components, is public spaces and those high traffic areas. So, we're continually going above and beyond our normal protocols. So there'll be dedicated staff that will be frequently increasing their frequency of cleaning with recommended products. Hand sanitizers are on the entrance to all hotels, on check-in, the elevator banks, and in meeting spaces. And as Carey's mentioned, social distancing. So hotels have the signage to remind customers to and guests to maintain their social distance, as well as putting screens at check-in to just give that extra protection to the customers and guests. In the guest rooms, again, it's about going above and beyond with the normal protocols. You know, we're cleaning with hospital grade disinfectants and putting disinfectant wipes in every room. And additionally, you know, we are employing new cleaning technology. We've got these electrostatic sprayers now that we're using to sanitize all areas of the hotels, and we're just at the moment testing some ultraviolet technology to see how we can sanitize objects such as guest key cards and those devices that maybe many of our employees have to use. And obviously, you know, we've got the mobile app, which is you know, usable in over 3,200 of our hotels. So again, from a social distancing point of view, you can check in, you can access your room, and you can you know, you can order room service from a social distance. But I think, you know, the big step for us with this cleanliness and almost this new norm for hospitality, it's been as much about keeping our employees safe as it has been about our guests, because I think what we have learned from this pandemic is that, you know, we basically are all in this together. So by, you know, looking after the employees and keeping them safe, they in turn do that for the guests and I guess the whole global community.
Yeah, that's great. And then again, sticking with you, Ian, for a second, it became very apparent with a lot of hotel groups, I have to say, but specifically with Marriott, how far this went to the top, how it was very much led from the senior leadership, very visibly, I felt at times. And I was just wondering, again, how important is that to, I guess, to you and your team, but also to your customers?
I think it is very important, you know, and I agree. Yes, it has come from the top. It's come from our president CEO, Arne Sorensen, and, you know, he has been very visible. But I also think it also comes from within Marriott. You know, we have a very strong standard of cleanliness or DNA within the company. It's part of our culture. And, you know, this even goes back, you know, we're a company that's over 90 years old. This goes back to our founder, J.W. Marriott. On his regular hotel visits, he would also inspect the kitchens and the guest rooms as part of those visits. And that's been carried through with his son and our current chairman, Bill Marriott, who does exactly the same. But, you know, I guess fundamentally what we're trying to establish is to make sure that, you know, guest employees know that when, you know, we are starting to travel confidently, you know, and I don't think this is any different from my colleagues on the panel, you know, we just want to be ready to welcome back those guests and them to know that they're doing so in a safe environment.
Thank you, Ian. Appreciate that. Hilary, again, I'm really interested in what you guys have been up to as well. Can you just give us a bit of a picture again around this cleanliness, hygiene, sort of how much you guys have been looking at that?
Yeah, so absolutely, it's priority for all our guests and staff in relation to health and safety. There was an initiative that rolled out in North America first to our 6,000 plus hotels there called Count on Us. And that was in early May. Then it came across to Europe, and we worked on that initiative and put a European version together along with our Rebound team. So just looking at enhanced health and safety protocols, working with Ecolab, which is a world-renowned health and safety company with over 100 years of experience, and then appointing hygiene heroes at all our properties as well. And looking at an incentive for them to ensure that all the hygiene initiatives are adhered to. And then we've also set up a trusted network of suppliers, both on a global scale, but also locally as well, for products that may not always be attainable if you're on the Greek islands, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, in terms of the business's commitment to this, was there any other discussions that, are we overdoing this? Are we overblowing this sort of stuff? Some of these systems that are in place are incredibly dramatic, very visible in front of the customer. Was this about showing that, to give them confidence, or is it about almost cutting as deep as you can to make sure that everyone is completely happy with what's going on?
I think it's all about consumer trust and confidence in the product as well, and what you're offering. I think it's absolutely paramount to have those measures in place, because you don't want to put your properties or your hotels or staff at risk as well from this COVID-19. And we're working as well with the World Tourism and Travel Council for a safety stamp. So that's at brand level for Wyndham Hotels and Resorts.
That's great. And again, just sort of same question with you, Hilary, as well. You mentioned Ecolab and their involvement in that. Again, is there value? We've seen some brilliant examples across the industry of working with even consumer-facing products, just to bringing almost that brand recognition or brand expertise, but also working with partners as well. Working with Ecolab, again, does that give that added layer of confidence to your customers as well?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a world-renowned brand, so absolutely it gives that confidence and trust. I
like that. Carey, I'm just really interested about something we were talking actually off air the other day about. It's this idea that sometimes, I guess, as a predominantly luxury brand like yours, you have to do things in a slightly different way. Can you just talk about, I guess the challenges of that? Obviously, Ian and Hilary have talked about, putting very visible signs in there and consumer confidence signs. You guys have to, I guess, look at things a slightly different way.
Yeah, slightly. I mean, I think to Ian and Hilary's points, absolutely, the standards of cleanliness, sanitization, and the new normal are something that's absolutely brought in from the top down, from us, from our owner right the way through. But by the nature of our client base, and as Ian and Hilary have in the luxury segment of their hotels, the touch points are just naturally higher right the way throughout the process, whether it's coming from landing in one of our destinations right the way through to coming to the hotel. So we've had to take a look at what that looks like and review our SOPs, make sure that they're aligned to the highest standards, whilst trying to do that in quite a subtle manner of what you would expect if you're coming into a luxury hotel, and what that looks like. And that revolves around PPE. And, when we first saw this, I saw some hotels in China that had big plastic shields up and, like metal guards. And our idea in terms of that is that we still need to offer a high element of the luxury experience. Now, in doing that, you're trying to find the balance is complex, in line with the expectation of those standards now. So it has been a challenge, and we've reviewed and constantly reviewed our SOPs internally and back of house, and then we were trying to align them with because of where we operate in terms of the regional standards, but trying to just make those subtle touches that will make sure that the client that returns back to Corinthia is experiencing exactly the same as before they left, before the pandemic. So that's been challenging. It takes a lot of commitment, and as Ian and Hilary know, the main piece of that is that this will add a layer of cost into the operation of what we're doing as hotel operators. From Ian and Hilary, who operate thousands of hotels within multiple brands under one brand, or a small luxury boutique collection of hotels like we are. So that's what we've tried to do, and we've tried to set that out and work within parameters, but try to do it slightly more subtly, should we say.
I see. And I just want to go back to a previous point you made, Carey, which I think is really important. And actually, by the way, there's some really great questions coming in at the moment, and I'm going to try and sort of weave these into the conversation as well. Someone's talked about this idea of hybrid meetings as part of a recovery strategy, and you mentioned earlier, Carey, this idea: what does a meeting now look like? What's our conferences now look like? And I guess it's not just about distancing, and it's not just about PPE and sanitization and cleanliness. It's about understanding that there's people that just aren't going to come in the foreseeable future, and we need to, as an industry, go and reach out to them. So I was just wondering, again, when you were reimagining that meeting room, that conference room of the future, how much did an increased technological investment come into your reckoning there?
Well, I think we've invested in technology across that, because across the portfolio, because we've known how the future was going. And I think that there's been some meetings where or smaller meetings that we would look after in terms of that high level, C-level, where they do connect quite a bit. I mean, I certainly know from my own perspective that the sooner we can get rid of Zoom and stuff like that, and we can get back to meeting each other face to face, would be. So I think that there will be. I'm sure in the short term, my personal feeling is that there will be a mixture of those hybrid events. But even in our recovery period, we've seen the requirements in certain destinations for social distancing change. We saw it in the UK yesterday. That change. What does that look like? Now, part of that process has meant that we've ended up talking to our clients and asking what their expectation is, what their feel is, what are the touch points, how does that look, how do they feel having other clients in on our mezzanine floor, for example, when their process could be different. They could be traveling from other destinations than what that is. Is it a domestic meeting? How does that look? So we're trying to work out what that is. Do I feel that there'll be, certainly in the short term, I feel there'll be a blended mix of hybrid meetings. I do believe, just in seeing what we've got coming through our pipeline, that there will still be a need for live events and those events. And I think that will come back with confidence. But I think a lot of those planners and those guys that are involved in the decision-making process are professional and know that they need to get that side moving. And I suppose from the people that are on this call today, it's our job to instill that they have the confidence to make sure that we're following the right protocols in the right areas, in the right countries, to ensure that they are safe and that their meeting, event, whatever it may be, goes smoothly, and that we have the responsibility to deliver exactly what they're looking to deliver. And that comes back to the confidence, like anything. It's like any of us who want to go on holiday or have that confidence of getting back on a plane or anything really from there. So I think that the confidence piece is a huge piece. And will we have to change the way that we operate, the way that we sell? Absolutely, in the short term.
That's great. Thanks, Carey. I wouldn't mind throwing that out to Ian and Hilary if you have any other opinions on that, because I do think that idea of the out of the room experience as well as the in the room experience is something that needs to be part of any recovery strategy.
I mean, I agree with what Carey said, and I think particularly short term, virtual meetings, whatever guise a virtual meeting takes, will be fundamental in the meetings requirements from hotels and also from customers. But I do think that you go back to the the economic global crash 10 years or so ago, and okay, COVID is far worse than that, but even then, part of that recovery, there was a lot of talk about video conferencing, virtual meetings, and that did play a part. But again, I think there was a lot of conversation about whether that the whole virtual environment would take over from those face-to-face meetings. I mean, clearly it still played a part, but to Carey's point, I still think face-to-face meetings are going to be vital. Certain markets, certain regions, the way of doing business is face-to-face anyway. That's that's part of the culture. So yeah, agree with what Carey said. I think short term there there will be probably a desire and demand for that, but I think longer term we'll see, once confidence in travel is there with the travelers, there will be a desire for a lot more face-to-face meetings.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. Just wanted to sort of stay another question. We'll get. I promise we'll get onto confidence in just a second, because I think it's a really important thing. There's another question actually that I don't know who wants to field it. I'm looking at Hilary, but we'll decide in a second. I think there's a question about unintended consequences, which is this idea. Yes, we can invest in sanitizers, but does that cause an issue with asthma? We can invest in one social distancing, but does that have a knock on? I was just wondering from an operational perspective, I guess it's about how much you can take responsibility for the well-being of everyone and how you can work that into your plans.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, really. I know in Greece, some of the hotels have come together and said, we're not hospitals, we're not doctors, we're just hotels, and we're doing our best. So in relation to sanitizers and asthma, I don't really have an answer for that, I'm afraid. I don't know. I'm going to field the question to Carey and Ian if.
There you go. That's good passing back. No, I think it's an interesting point, and like I say, maybe it's not one that we need to go into a huge amount of detail on there.
Yeah.
But it's one I think it's interesting that people are already thinking about.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Just around that as well. So let's go towards sort of consumer confidence and for you, Hilary, just to give you on slightly steadier ground, right? Just in terms of sort of managing that consumer confidence, obviously, it's about you guys having a direct dialogue with your end customer, and of course through to their delegates. Again, how are you sort of phrasing and structuring those conversations, albeit being done by Zoom, phone, and not in a face-to-face capacity? How can you bring to life the proposition again?
It's just regular contact with our key clients. We've held surveys and speaking to our hotels on ground level as well to understand what's happening within their countries and in their localities, and what they are doing, so they can instill the confidence to us where they are, and then we in turn as GSO can instill it back to our end clients. So it's all about trust and confidence.
Yeah, and again, for you, is it a matter of trying to get that confidence right down to the delegate as well? Because and again, it's an interesting question. One of the first up was that it's all very well us getting our organisers or our bookers in a confident mood, but actually it's the corporates that decide whether they're letting people out at all. And again, how are you going about trying to keep those guys, encourage those guys out of their offices, basically?
Yeah, it's the key stakeholders at the end of the day that you've got to convince, and then they need to ricochet it down to the travellers on the safety measures. But one question I was asked, you can fly a full load of people to a conference potentially in Spain, and they sit together in an airplane for 3 hours, but yet they're not allowed to sit together in a meeting room, and they have to have 2 meters apart. So there's all these questions that you need to ask as well, and it's the individual stakeholder and corporate company that need to look at their whole travel policy and decide on what they're going to do and how they're going to take it forward.
I think that's a good point. Carey, same question to you. I guess it's a matter of how you're bringing to life the proposition in front of your own customers, albeit on virtual platforms. But again, how far can you push those messages to inject confidence into your end user and your customer's customer, so to speak?
Well, I think there's been, I've seen it change in terms of teasing the way, I would say, teasing that we're coming back, how we're coming back, keeping in touch messages, as Hilary said, keeping engaged, trying to understand, and also working on a corporate level with the new framework that buyers are working for, and asking them the question about what does that look like for that. We spoke to a number of our top clients about what they're looking at. What does the rest of 2020 look like? How does 21 look like? We've been reviewing the inquiries that we've got coming in. How does that look? What is the pattern of them? Overlaid them of what we've received in the past. What does pace look like to do that? I mean, obviously, again, we have subtle marketing messages there, the way it comes through digitally. But I think the biggest piece is from a corporate perspective, is obviously the confidence of the buyer. And now, obviously, this will be something that goes up the chain in terms of the corporations and the confidence there. And obviously, in some of our destinations where we sit there, we're quite fortunate enough that we have some quite key buy-in from there. And obviously, confidence spreads down from the top downwards. So if you have that confidence that your senior team are traveling, or you've got certain segments within your business that are traveling, then that will create the demand. From a leisure perspective, I think that there will be a pent-up demand for that. There's a lot of people that will be. I know if you look at the US at the moment, they're talking about the short term is this, this staycation. But I'm confident they'll be coming back to Europe in the fall or from September onwards, permitting that. I think a lot of it hangs around how the local governments, countries allow their individual health policies and how they're coordinated with what corporate clients are doing. But I mean, from us, we see an opportunity. We're talking to people. We see that demand's there. We've seen over the last couple of weeks that definitely business levels are picking up. There's interest in terms of there. So I think we said on the call before, on our previous call, that we weren't doing an awful lot wrong before the pandemic. So I think if we can make sure that we're all following best practice and we're all aligned to what we're doing, which it seems that, from the health and safety position, that everyone's taking that seriously, that confidence hopefully will rebound and we will be able to navigate our way through 2020 and look at 2021 hopefully in a more positive light.
Okay, Ian, I'll be really interested in your own thoughts here as well.
I agree with what the guys have said there, and I'm not sure that there's a huge amount I can add to that. It's I think confidence is coming back. We do need to show that to our travellers, and that's also coupled with the restrictions that are there with the various countries and their border controls. Because as soon as they start to relax, the airlines are, as they are now doing, starting to increase their
Sorry, I think we might have lost Ian for a second there. So what I might do is if it's
traffic and their routes, and there's confidence there, it's
I think we might have lost Ian for a second there. So I might, if it's okay, Carey, can I just peek on you in terms of just where that sort of moves forward to as well? I mean, I guess for you guys, it's also about your confidence as a business as well, right? It's about you guys projecting positively forward, sitting there saying, right, okay,
yeah,
we feel like this is going to happen, so we're going to almost will it to happen into the industry as well. Is it a matter of trying to boost that?
Yeah, I think look, it's internal communication as well about what trends are seeing. We are there to communicate internally around that, so that our senior management can inform stakeholders of what's actually being seen on the ground, as well as what's linked to our commercial position. So yeah, absolutely. I think to Ian's point is an absolute critical point around what happens around the quarantine and the border positions across the whole world, really, in terms of that. But I think the confidence in terms of internal confidence will come from being able to demonstrate what we have been seeing from the various stages of it, and hopefully we will be able to look at it after this and say, we did this, we could do this, we could implement that again, or we should change that. And also, I think you'll probably see that there's probably a lot more dialogue, not in terms of sharing information, but just in terms of sharing practice between hoteliers and what they're finding that's good. And as I think Ian and Hilary have said before, what is good practice. We wouldn't have the same policy as Marriott, for example, in terms of just because of their size and scale. So I think that the main engaging piece in that is to make sure that you've got that internal confidence that you can then go out and demonstrate and listen to what our clients are saying to us and what they need, and feed that back to our business. That's I think that is, and I think the change of that will hopefully come sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Carey. There's a really good point on one of the question that's been asked is this idea of global standards, and wouldn't that be a way of giving confidence through consistency? If there was a COVID-19 global stamp that said, right, we're safe and it's consistent across. I only mention that because of your point about working with other hotels. I'd be interested to see what the panel thinks about that. Welcome back, Ian, by the way.
I've told you face to face is always better.
Ian makes this point in more ways than one. But sorry, do you mind if I throw that on you? And in a moment you get back, what do you think about global standards, or at least industry specific standards, maybe through associations or what?
I think the idea is great, but I think even, and I'm sure Carey and Hilary see this, but even when you're trying to get standards across your whole portfolio, you've got governance of different requirements for different countries and different legalities. So I think it just becomes, it's very, very complicated to try and then instill and instigate that as a global standard that everybody, in the hotel industry or the travel industry has to, try to meet. I just think
Oh no.
the practicality of that would be very, very difficult.
That's great. Thank you.
Oh, sorry,
we lost you.
Did you lose me
stuttered
there
for a second there, at least on my screen. But Hilary, I'd be interested in your view as well from that. Again, I think Ian makes a really good point. And as much as it seems simple to create a global standard across absolutely everyone, maybe we need to trust our hotels to do the due diligence, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I echo what Ian has said as well. It would be very difficult to put a global stamp, especially, when you've got different hotels in different countries from 2 to 5 star and different legislations and local laws and governance as well. But again, I think it's very good to talk and to understand what, we're seeing on a UK level, on a European level and further afield. And on that question, I'm going to ask, going back to hybrid meetings, Ian and Carey, are you seeing many inquiries for hybrid meetings coming through at this moment in time, or are you seeing it back to the normal cabaret style for 50 people?
I've seen across my team is that there's a high demand for live meetings, but there is a request in there for what supporting technology have you got, and I think that will then, as we move through the RFP or the lead process, will become clearer and engagement. I think these are from stakeholders that are saying, look, this is what we want to do. We're not quite sure of how it's going to operate yet. Yeah. This is the outline of what we need. Are you able to facilitate this if we need to? So I think that's what we've started to see. But again, to Ian's point, I think that the face-to-face bit will certainly continue.
And similarly, Hilary, we're seeing requests for both, but again, it can be hybrid meetings within hybrid meetings because fundamentally there's still as part of that meeting a face-to-face element. Yeah. You could have people in a room or a series of rooms.
Yeah. And similar from our perspective as well.
That's great. Yeah. I just want to. We've got about 15 minutes left. So what I wanted to do is maybe just
some people dialing in for an office, some people in a meeting.
Cool. I just want to pick up some of the questions on the feed as well, because they point in certain directions, and some of them might be a bit challenging. So whoever sort of puts their hand up first. I think a really important one. It's a personal passion of mine as well. But it revolves around sustainability. The industry's made a hell of a lot of progress to make itself sustainable, and the question is essentially saying, are we about to throw that all away as we turn to plastics, single-use plastics, PPE, perspex and things like that? Are we about to take a massive step backwards? And what's your sort of view on that? How can you begin to balance this out? Well done, Carey. Well done, Carey.
I think it's the lesser of two evils, isn't it? You're being asked one question around the health and safety side of it. How far that goes depends on what the legislation is from the country. But I think that there will be if you are being, you're having to wear plastic face masks or gloves or whatever it is, there will be a natural increase in that. I think that getting the balance between it is going to be the key question. And I don't think that our sustainable or our CSR policy we would want to deviate from. But I think that as a result of this and as a demand of the new health and safety requirements that I think we're going to need to do to build confidence and that will be added to that there will be a result of that. And we hope that that's a short-term situation. So that's my personal thought on that, really. And it's a difficult one because obviously it takes away from what everyone's been working to in that space.
How about you, Hilary? I'd be interested in your thoughts on this as well. I mean, I guess both personally and professionally, it's a tricky one to balance, right?
Absolutely, and I agree with what Carey said. I hope it's going to be short term. I think things will evolve as well. That plastics will change. Masks will change to cloth, etc., and recyclable. But at this moment in time, it's only been 14 weeks, and everything has moved at such an incredible pace. I think needs must, and at this moment in time, we've got to do what we've got to do.
That's a really good answer. So, sorry, Ian, I didn't know.
No, I'd agree wholeheartedly with Hilary and Carey. I don't think there's anyone wants to deviate from that corporate social responsibility, but I think we're faced with needs must, and obviously the sooner we can get vaccines out into the world, confidence returns with travel, and the need then for some of these protective measures are going to hopefully be eradicated as well. It's but I think it's we have to, it's a need. It's a balance of health, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Against
Thanks, Ian. I wanted to stick with you, Ian, as well as another question that I think is quite interesting. I think it's something that Carey alluded to as well about air travel and things like that, which is this idea that how much can we as hoteliers, we as event bookers, be in control of everything? Our customers will arrive having been on flights with other people, God knows where, through transfers and things like that. I was just wondering how much you should or you should begin to try and be in control of the whole journey of the customer, and I guess what your approach to that would be.
I guess it's working as an industry collective. I won't assume to comment on what the airlines are doing themselves, because that's not my area of expertise. But I think before I got cut off last time, it's all about the confidence and the trust that the traveller has in the whole travel experience. So we as Hilary, Carey, myself as hoteliers can provide a very safe environment within the hotel, but we've got to make sure that the customer journey, if it's via air or rail or whatever it is, that they have that confidence that when they step outside their house, they get into a car, they get into a tube, or they get to the airport, get on the plane, they have that whole confidence in the whole journey. If there's a lack of confidence in any part of that journey, again, I think it kind of breaks down. And this situation is an industry-wide one that we need to, I guess, try and fix or find solutions to collectively.
That's a really great answer. Thank you, Ian. I appreciate it. I just wanted, again, we're sort of drawing to a close here, and I think hopefully, if I've done my job properly, we've had the main questions for our audience. Although I'd encourage them to keep coming in. So I wondered whether I could throw the ultimate curveball at you and ask you to start predicting the future. I was going to pick on Hilary again. You know what? I'm going to pick on Carey this time. I'll come back to you, Hilary, because I gave you the first one. But first of all, Carey, I wouldn't mind. First of all, your own view on it, your own confidence as we enter 2021. But I guess the big question is, what do you feel this industry needs to do or prove to get itself back wheels turning again in a really meaningful way as we come to the end of the year and into the next?
Well, personally, I think that all the elements that we've spoke about, and Ian's, I think, just covered it off really well in terms of that. What you need, there's that all the areas and components need to come together to restore that confidence. So that's it's our element in terms of being able to create a safe environment, which we do. We are also there. We're not just, and I think Hilary said a great thing earlier. We are not hospitals. We are there to create experiences for business travelers, for families, for all different walks of life in terms of that. So I don't think we should really move away from what we're good at. And we work in hospitality, and we're there to work with people, and we're there to try and create experiences. And I don't think we should ever move away from that. I think that the The health and safety part will be critical, but as you know, linked to the question earlier about CSR, how does that hopefully, as Ian said, you know, we find vaccines or we find therapies that are able to help us, that restores confidence. Then there's the big piece from the governments around around the situations on the borders, and I think they're all very much linked. But in terms of, do I believe that there's a demand? Yes. Do I think people are going to want to travel? Absolutely. Do I think people will value travel more after spending 3 or 4 months indoors? Absolutely. Also, I think it's critical for the industry. You know, I think that it's really, really critical for the industry that people work together to ensure that there's minimal job losses. There's the highest of standards retained, whether that's coming to a luxury hotel or coming to an inn on a motorway. I think that we need to make sure that whole journey, and that, I think Ian poised it beautifully and said that whole journey, the responsibility comes from a planner, from a third party that's supporting in that, the airline, the ground transport to us to create that experience. So I'm really positive for 2021. I think just seeing from where that's coming through the demand in terms of talking to people, talking to my peers of what they're seeing. I think obviously there was a period in between which was very, very dark, but now obviously I think a lot of people are getting back into reopenings. The strategies that have been put in place are starting to be implemented. So I very much think, I think the industry is a great industry that has some really, really good people who are able to demonstrate what we can offer and, you know, what destinations can offer. That will be a key thing as well, you know, the destination as well.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Carey. How about you, Hilary? What's your crystal ball tell you, and how do you personally feel?
Well, you know, globally, at the moment, Europe is leading the way. There's 37 destinations that have eased their travel restrictions. Countries like Portugal, the Champions League will be taking place there in August. And there's an area of confidence, especially around countries that maybe didn't have as many cases. And they're, you know, pushing it again. Portugal, I've looked at a health and safety stamp by the Portuguese government, which they will be doing random checks on hotels and restaurants and bars, and countries like South Korea again. So I think there's an air of confidence, and once these countries start moving, I think it will feed into all the other countries as well, and it will give travellers that air of confidence to come back and start using hotels for conference and events again.
Thank you. And how about yourself, Ian? I'm really interested in your take.
Yeah, and Carey earlier identified, you know, I think it's clear that we're going to have, there's a new normal. I mean, I think it's incredible how the pandemic has shifted travel expectations even in the last two months. So I think we all have to rethink how we're going to deliver, you know, a customer experience that's both hygienic and safe, but still keep that human connection with which this industry is, you know, is renowned for. But I agree. The green shoots are there. You know, I look at China. We've got all our hotels are open. We've got significant percentage of our bookings are coming from leisure, whether it's staycation resorts or even group from 2020, and also even within EMEA, where the markets have started to lift restrictions, as Hilary alluded to. Again, you know, the signs of bookings for staycations, of restaurant bookings are and reservations are encouraging. You know, we are seeing, you know, initially that domestic and inter-regional travel starting to pick up. Will we see international travel? Yeah, definitely goes back to that whole confidence piece that will slowly come from the travellers, and also I think as we see global release of the measures. But I think as a industry, you know, we need to reignite that passion to travel with our travellers. You know, we need to continue as an industry to lobby governments to support the industry, but ultimately, you know, we've got to do what we do best as an industry is look after people, and you know, the travel will come back, and I think we're all very optimistic about that.
That's great. No, that's a great answer, Ian. I'm going to be nasty as well, because someone's dropped one of those last minute questions that I can't ignore, which is basically about price. I'm sticking with you, Ian. which is basically does all this extra stuff that comes in. It's a great question to ask to someone in sales, but all this extra stuff and the extra operational stuff that's coming in because of this. Do you foresee, as part of your crystal ball, that it's going to have an impact on the prices for conference and events?
Yeah, great question. I guess it's the million-dollar question. At the moment, if you look at the conversation we were having 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, definitely within Marriott, it was the conversation centered around how many hotels have we closed or are closing. We're now, again, weeks ahead. The discussion is about hotels that are either opening or have opened, and so there's a positive picture. But fundamentally, hotels need to start driving business into their properties. So at the moment, I don't foresee that being the case. But I guess the million-dollar question is how quickly we start to see a return to normal business levels.
Good answer. Thank you. How about you, Hilary? Have you got a view on this?
Yeah, similar. I think it's just getting people back through the door, instilling that trust and confidence. There are increased costs, and there are extra staffing levels to keep everything clean. And I think at the moment it really is about getting people back in through the door. On a country by country level, it'll be different. That's great.
Yes, agreed.
There is actually another question again, but by all means put your hands up for this, but I think it's an important one to address. I'll read it verbatim, which is, how do you feel about the latest news around the EU not to allow US travelers in because of the weak handling of COVID-19? Without US, in my eyes, the industry won't recover. Obviously an important market. Again, I wouldn't mind people's views on that.
I think the US market is a huge source market for a lot of different regions, Europe especially. But I go back to I think the point initially, I think we as an industry, we're looking to see travel that is domestic and interregional, because regardless of the US, we're still, if you look at Europe as a continent, there are still some countries that have got greater restrictions and border controls than others. So again, we need those to start to lift. I think the domestic travel is coming back and will increase. Obviously, without the US market, it makes life a little more difficult, and we would love to see that source market coming back into Europe. So long term, yes, we need that market to get back to the levels that we experienced in 2019. But I think short term, I go back to the point that I think we're targeting that domestic and maybe that interregional business short term because of those the European constraints we find with certain borders anyway.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Okay, Carey, I'd be interested in your opinion of that before we wrap up.
Exactly. Ian's, I think, absolutely hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's there. We know for us as a business, the US market is critical. We know in terms of when we see our booking patterns for the US market. So we need the US market, but I think our immediate strategies for Europe will be domestic and into Europe at the moment. And I think but as I think everyone's alluded to on the call, things have moved very quickly in a short period of time. So what's said today by Monday could be completely different.
Absolutely.
So whatever your strategy is, it's needing to be fluid at the moment at best.
Yeah, I'll roll with it.
Agreed.
Thanks so much. I mean, I guess what I've personally taken from this is a really nice snapshot of an industry that hasn't been sitting on its hands for the last 12 weeks. That's been actively trying to get things done for the customer, get this industry back and running, get confidence back in, and actually look after its industry and the businesses it works with. So thanks very much for all your insight. It means a lot. And also thanks very much for all the people that ask questions. Like I say, we plan these things out, and we want to kind of get across the main thrust of it. And these questions really help us point in the right direction and kind of challenge our speakers from time to time as well. So that's all good fun. it only leaves me to say that next Wednesday on the 20th of July, we've got Rob Davidson, who's Managing Director of Mice Knowledge, and a mate and a really, really interesting speaker. So he's talking about the discussion of the value of face-to-face events, which has obviously been touched on by this panel. I'd highly recommend us listening to Rob next week. He's a great guy and a really, really insightful speaker. Much like the guys we've had on today. So I will say thank you very much. A collective wave, because you can't hear the round of applause, but I will thank you for your time, and thanks everyone for the questions. And yes, you guys next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.